Welcome. How you doing? How you doing? As you can see, it is I, Jaimir. Today, I'm coming to you from a little bit of a new environment, but it's still the same place. New environment got me all turned around. Still the same place though. I can see y'all trickling in a little bit. It is a new year, so I hope everyone brought it in safe and there was nothing wrong or anything hazardous going on. Is everyone just came in? So you can see, we got a whole lot of things just changing up a little bit. But this week we'll be discussing the Western medical empire and how that relates to African/Black people everywhere around the world. And we got a handful of guests. I'm pretty excited to introduce these people to you, as well as to bring back a few familiar faces. So it's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. As we kick off this week, as a sort of disclosure, some of the topics might be a little bit heavy, so definitely want to get that in because we are talking about Black people when it comes to Western medicine, and that can be a little bit traumatic and for some people to go through. So just to give you a little bit of a warning on that one for some of the topics that we do discuss. So if you feel like things are getting a little too heavy for you, we definitely understand, and we thank you for being here with us. But you know how we like to start things off all the time with that one video that lets us know off the bat that we are not only loved, but that we're great. And I don't even know, I'm still going. Basically, Shania is here, and Shania is going to kick things off. So when I come back, my job can be a little bit easier because I've already had that affirmation all over the show. So I'll see you in a minute.
Greetings, virtual villagers. My name is Shania, and do you know what time it is? It's affirmation time! Time to remind ourselves how great we are. So everybody, repeat after me. I am smart. I have purpose. I am confident. I am valuable. My voice is worthy of being heard. I am an asset to my family, school, and community. I respect myself and I respect others. I am beautifully made inside and out. I love my beautiful hair and I love my beautiful brown skin. I am more than enough. Great job, virtual villagers. Can I get a virtual high five? Great job. And always remember how fantastic you are.
You. Always fantastic, always great, always. And before we get into our topic on the Western medical empire, keyword on empire there, as well in the relation to African people, we have an Africana revolutionary who was impacted. So she was a victim of this empire, and yet she still pushed on. That's right. We're going to be talking about a woman who stood 5 feet 4 inches from Montgomery County, Mississippi, civil rights activist, champion of the people, farmer, worker, mother, wife, but most importantly, she was a human being. That's right, it's Fannie Lou Hamer. So let's get into it. Born into sharecropping in Montgomery County, Mississippi on October 6, 1917, Fannie Lou Townsend Hamer was a force to be reckoned with during the American Civil Rights Movement, as well as her whole life. Standing as, like I said, at 5 feet and 4 inches, Miss Hamer was the only person able to read and write on the plantation that she worked on, which led her to be a leader in her community. Now, before she'd grown up, she experienced a broken hip while working on the plantation, and then she was falsely diagnosed with polio, which later hindered her ability to be mobile, and she was never treated for that broken hip. So it set incorrectly, and things just never got better. But then another incident of medical malpractice and pure evil that Mama Hamer had experienced and was a victim of was an illegal hysterectomy in 1960, which was very common at the time. The events of her early life would lead her to a life of advocacy and activism within her community of Mississippi and the American South. Having been incensed by the denial of Black people to vote in the extremely racist Mississippi, she led 17 other brave volunteers to register to vote in Indianola, Mississippi, where they were met with excessive racism and barred from voting due to an unconstitutional and illogical literacy test. 2 years later, in 1963, after continuing her electoral battle with the people of Mississippi, along with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, she was able to not only register to vote, but help organize the masses of Black Mississippi into the Mississippi Freedom Delta Democratic Party in 1964. That's quick work right there. And then later on, she'd go on to establish several economic ventures that ensured the livelihood and sustainability of her community through the Pig Bank, which was free pigs for Black farmers to use, the Freedom Farm Cooperative, which was buying land for Black people to use collectively to farm and live, as well as 200 low-income housing units in Ruleville, Mississippi. And those houses were recently destroyed, but they stood for roughly 40 to 50 years, truly. And she transitioned on March 14th, 1977 at Taborian Hospital in Mound Bayou due to breast cancer at the young age of 59. A true revolutionary and a freedom fighter, her memory serves to show us all that we can help our communities in a variety of ways. So we salute you, Mama Hamer, and we just thank you for all your work, whether it be everywhere, just extensive. But that we're not done here, because this is a Clever Communities in Action production. So usually when we tell you about these Africana revolutionaries, there's also a book that goes with it, right? So when we talk about the life of Fannie Lou Hamer, there's one book that stands out above the others, and that book is Voices of Freedom, Fannie Lou Hamer, Spirit of the Civil Rights Movement, reviewed by Deborah McRod. And that book right there, as you can see, there we go, I'm getting a little bit better at it. New environment, new year, working the jitters out. So make sure you get that book about Mama Hamer, because truly one of the unsung heroes in American history, but she's a sung hero indeed on this platform. So I want to thank you guys for, reviewing that with me, and I'll see you in a minute. And I'm back. I'm glad to be back too, because now this is the part where, with 2050 and beyond, we introduce our Africana revolutionary, and we sort of set the tone after Shania, of course, and then we sort of contextualize what we'll be doing, because the main part here for tonight's show is the panel discussion. So make sure you stick around for that one. But before we can get into the panel, before we can talk about these subjects in the contemporary, we have to sort of contextualize things. And when it comes to contextualizing things, we tend to have a historian or two with us, depending on the given week and depending on how unselfish I'm feeling, because I really enjoy the spotlight, you know what I mean? So I'm pretty excited to bring on my friend Joseph Sturgeon here. So how you doing, Jody?
I'm doing good. How about you, John Muir?
I'm doing great. New year, new first week of the show in the new year too, bringing things on, coming close to a close, but not just yet.
Not just yet.
Good, I'm good. But also, it is a full house tonight, which I'm pretty excited about, because he's been gone in Kansas for quite some time. I don't know what he was doing over there, and he wasn't able to be on the show because there is no internet in Kansas. So we got him coming back. You want to introduce him?
Hey, it's the history major straight from New York, Mr. Freshman 2020-2021, the one and only Obiora Okeke.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to see you back. You got the Howard shirt on and everything. Okay, Howard down. I got my CCA up here because starting the year off right with that product placement. But You guys are here for a reason, and it's not the chit chat. The people want historical context and grounding of the subject, which is the Western medicine and the relation to African / Black people. And so I'll start things off because we were just talking about Mama Hamer and the forced hysterectomy, and during the time of the like 60s, late 50s time period, it was a common practice in Mississippi of forcibly sterilizing Black women, and it was officially sanctioned by the state of Mississippi. And just to put things in like perspective about how violent and like expansive this thing was, an estimate of about 60% of Black women in Sunflower County, Mississippi, were forcibly sterilized during this time period. And that's just what we know, you know what I mean? Because a lot of the things, they don't come out until years after the fact. So it's probably a lot higher given that Black people weren't really regarded with much of anything in the American South. So yeah, themes are going to be a lot heavier today. And then moving on with the mutilation of Black people, especially Black women here, J. Marion Sims he got a statue in New York, so that's your state, Obi. Congrats. And it was removed after a bunch of outcry because he's regarded as the father of modern gynecology because of his work on the vaginal speculum and developing treatment for vesico-vaginal fistula. I took Latin, so working also known as VVV, VVF, and VVF repair. And it all came at the expense from his extensive mutilation of Black people because his work came from the use of Black people who were enslaved and unable to be protected from his unethical and racist and violent practices. So all of that research and experimentation came at the cost of people who couldn't really, who didn't not, I don't want to say couldn't defend themselves because they surely could, but they didn't have the defense of the society that they were in to allow them to be defended. And then moving on to a quite recent one, you have the infamous story about Henrietta Lacks, we know, and her cells, of course, which doubled every 20 to 24 hours. So extensive, were taken from her without her consent from Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore in 1951 because she'd originally came to seek treatment for cervical cancer, and she later died that same year in 1951. But upon seeing that her cells repeated so fast that the doctors took her cells without her consent while she was alive, and then after she passed away, she transitioned from the cervical cancer, they were just like, okay, cool, so this is mine now. And we see things like this happen continuously. And the HELA or HeLa line of medical treatment is named after her, but she doesn't get any of that credit because, well, she didn't agree to any of that. And her cells have been used to save lives, of course, but they weren't able to save hers. And we have to question and speculate whether it was because they just didn't care about a Black woman at that point in time. And keep in mind, that was in 1951. So pretty recent. All of this stuff is very recent if you look at American history. Then another one that's pretty infamous is the Tuskegee medical experiment, in which it started around 1920, 20 years before they found the cure to syphilis. So we understand that the cure for syphilis was penicillin in 1940, 1941. That was when penicillin was the most predominant treatment for it. So 20 years before they started the experiment, and then 12 years into the study in 1932, when the cure was found, they still withheld it from the participants and continued to lie to them. And the reason why this whole thing started is because the doctors, they came in to the area around Tuskegee, and they basically said that they were going to treat 399 Black men for bad blood, which was just a catch-all medical term back then, which could mean literally anything from syphilis to like pneumonia. So Then they forcibly injected syphilis into 399 black men, while 201 of them were seen as a control group and they weren't given syphilis. And then they were denied any medical treatment for the next 40 years. That is up until 1972. That's right. And in exchange for this 4 decades of mistreatment and medical malpractice, the men were given free medical exams because they were studying them, free meals to sort of mitigate any like health factors, as well as burial insurance because the prospect of all 399 of them making it was very slim in the eyes of the white doctors because they had no hopes of seeing them make it or treating them. So they wanted to make sure that if they died, they at least have a grave. And like we said, even when penicillin was introduced as the main treatment in the 1940s, the men were still denied the medical treatment. And the reason why the news had broke out in 1972 is because there was the Public Health Administration came in and was like, "What are you guys doing over here?" And then they're like, "Oh, we're experimenting." And then they found out that they'd broken literally everything that it meant to be like a medical practitioner. And then in the subsequent years, the families, the spouses and the children of these men, they were given the proper treatment as well as around $10 million for their suffering in a settlement. But think of $10 million for 40 years of mistreatment and just medical abuse is rather slim pickings. But the families also pooled their resources together to start the Tuskegee experiment for syphilis treatment in order to give back and to make sure that this type of thing would never happen, and that people who suffered from syphilis and syphilis research could sort of make strides that were ethical. And then aside from the very dark history of white people invading black people, there's also the bright side about black people making strides in the medical field. And we have this, before we get into that, the question comes with, is it worth it if black people's lives are always at risk when we're talking about the Henrietta Lacks situation? So what do you guys think, since you're awfully quiet this day? I mean, I'm carrying us right now.
Oh, I didn't know I had the opportunity to talk yet.
What's the point of being on the show? You're on the screen, right?
You just been talking nonstop. But anyway,
right.
With Henrietta Lacks, I feel as though it's not worth it. I feel as though you have several situations where the premise of consent was abused, and I don't even want to say test subjects. The black people were consistently had information withheld from them, so they wouldn't even have been able to give proper consent. So I really don't think it's worth it. I feel as though at the expense of black lives, what we've learned is simply just not okay. And the fact that so much of medical progress has been based off the backs of abusing black people it's simply not okay. It's simply not okay.
Absolutely. And we could get into the fact that a lot of these doctors aren't healers, but they just wait for things to go bad and then treat the ailment then instead of actually preventing the actual disease. And then we get into the fact that when it comes to medical treatment in the West, it's more so seen as a commodity instead of a right. And then it gets into the point where, is human life really essential, or does it matter if you're getting paid off of it? And then it's like, is medical service a thing that's supposed to help people, or is it a thing that's supposed to help people who can pay and who quote unquote matter in a certain society? But we can get into that in like 10 minutes.
That's for the panel.
We can get that in like 10 minutes though. And also, Jody, you got it?
No, I have reservations to make, but I'm reserving them for the panel.
Go ahead then. Okay. I got you. Because we talked about like how the West and white people have basically just like Ms. Stark said, African American people were tricked into a lot of different things. And there's a very key word, trick, because when you're a medical professional, they tended to hide a lot of what was going on, like the actual happenings of things, from these people for the purpose of medical gain and experimentation. So a lot of trickery, a lot of deceit going on. And then to get on the other side of the deceitful coin, we have black people doing what we always do, which is make progress on the globe. So in the late 1600s, early 1700s, in Boston, New England, Onesimus was an African who was born in Africa, and he was enslaved in Boston. So he was shipped from Africa to Boston, and he taught the Bostonian people about the process of inoculation, which saved the people from dying of smallpox and making sure that Boston wasn't wiped out. So Onesimus, basically the father of American vaccines. But we have to, and this is something that we learned from Dr. Carr, right, Obi?
Yes, sir.
There it is. He's alive. He's alive. And we have to understand that Onesimus didn't just know this because he was testing things. He knew this because he was taught this by his forefathers and foremothers, and that inoculation was a common practice. And this was at a time when washing and bathing regularly, like daily, was seen as a bad thing in Europe. And here were African people out already practicing vaccinations and having to teach them. So we see that a lot of things were lost during the mile for transatlantic slave trade, or any slave trade, really. And we see that Onesimus is truly kicking things off for us. Then we have 1837. James McCune Smith was the first Black person to receive a medical degree in, like I said, 1837, and went on to challenge several pieces of race science, claiming that Black people were inferior. And race science includes a lot of these pseudosciences like phrenology, which is where they like look at a person's skull to make a bunch of different lies about said person or said race, such as Black people. The scene from Django where like there's a dimple in the skull makes Black people submissive or passive. Race science. Well, Thomas Jefferson, founding father, great mind, he also peddled in race science, and he was debunked by James McCune Smith. And he was debunked on his notes on the state of Virginia. And that was just one person that Smith obliterated. So, yeah. And then following that, we have Rebecca Lee Crumpler, who was the first Black woman physician within the U.S., graduating in 1864. A lot of people don't know who she is. They like to accredit someone else who graduated 3 years after her. So we want to give Miss Crumpler her flowers and her due diligence, and thank you. She's going to be a great physician. And then this one, how we're going to end things before we get into our panel a little bit, is the hall that I was supposed to stay in, that we were supposed to stay in. And unfortunately, there it is.
Okay, I see you. I already knew where it was going.
Charles Richard Drew, who pioneered blood preservation techniques that stemmed from his extensive research on blood banking and blood transfusion. And he would create the first large-scale blood banks, and these blood banks would then go on to be used during like World War I and World War II. World War II, more specifically, to help the British troops get the much-needed blood. But Drew was working with the American Red Cross. He later resigned from the position because that they had segregated blood banks. So blood coming.
They were still operating under the notion that Black blood and white blood were inherently different in some way while he was working for them. And he had been arguing for some time that that wasn't true. So when they were going to carry out like some type of action, I'm not sure what it was, and they announced that they're like still going to segregate the blood, he was just like, no, I'm not with this, and he dropped out of his position.
Doty done said it all. And then aside from that, he was also a round surgeon and was chief of surgery at Freedman's Hospital, which is now what hospital?
Howard University Hospital. We still call it Freedman's Hospital sometimes today. It's pretty much the same building.
I am not calling that Freedman's Hospital, bro. It's 2020.
I really have never heard anyone call it Freedman's Hospital.
And he was also a professor of biology at Howard University for decades. Like decades upon decades. So that was
he was tenured.
Actually, if you look it up, you can actually find a video of him like teaching at Howard University, and it's kind of like trippy because it's like, wow, this feels like a long time ago, and you see this like black and white video of this man teaching in live action. It gave me chills when I watched it, but you can look it up.
Thank you. See, that's why Jody's here. That is why Jody's here. Oh, okay. Bet. Because Dr. Quarles is already on it. So he says, medical apartheid by Harriet Washington. Fannie Lou Hamer received a medical appendectomy or hysterectomy. American Eugenics Society influenced the Holocaust. Yes. Marion Sims performed gynecological surgery on Black women without anesthesia. Yeah, heavy topics. But Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington is one of the books that I was going to like front load you with at the beginning of the conversation, because that is like a seminal text on what we're talking about when we speak of the Western medical empire in relation to Black people. So thank you, Dr. Quarles, for that, as well as just he touched on eugenics and ahead of the curve. I'm excited to get into this a little bit now. But I thank my great host. Any words before we get a word from our sponsors?
See y'all after a word from our sponsors.
No energy, no enthusiasm. It's supposed to be before we get into our panel discussion, thank you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Also, make sure that you comment, and let everyone in your family know so this virtual village can get larger. And make sure you tell those HBCU students about this platform we're having, because we're trying to grow that HBCU family. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Buying or selling a home doesn't have to be difficult. At the James Allen Group, we work tirelessly to get families into homes and to get our listings sold quickly at the best price. James Allen, our principal broker, has over 30 years of experience as a realtor. As a U.S. Navy veteran, his knowledge of Hampton Roads and its community is a vital tool in meeting the home buying needs of military families. If you're ready to buy or sell your home, contact the James Allen Group at 757-449-8322. Sign up today for our free home buyer or seller seminar at jamesallengroup.com.
And we're back. So this is the part that everyone's been waiting for. We're doing really good on time too, because remember it used to be like maybe 45 minutes before someone would come on, and now we got a full hour with these people. This is great. It's like a full house. Everything is going so well. So to start things off, we're gonna bring back some of the familiar faces and to sort of de-Howardify the whole situation. You've seen this person before. They go to Clark Atlanta University right now, where they're studying psychology. Community activist based out of Hampton area, that Hampton Newport News area, that upper 757 area. Former virtual village influencer. We have Khalil.
Hey.
What's up? Well, how you been?
Good. I've been good. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get ready for this engagement conversation.
Great
to have you. Thank you for having me.
I'm just always happy to have somebody who's been doing this CCIA thing with me.
I'm saying the virtual village gang, I know y'all missed us because I missed y'all.
Already know, man. The limited edition.
The limited edition.
That new edition for the older.
But you know, I'm gonna let you bring on everybody else before I go down memory lane.
I was reminiscing too much. We also have our friend from Howard University, standing at a solid 7'3", the finance major from the cult of SOB, the School of Business, out there live from the big and tall section of Suits. We have Marsh. How you doing, Marsh?
How y'all doing? I'm glad to be back, man.
I'm happy to have you back, man. This is gonna be great. Because I know last week's conversation you were really into it. You already taking a sip of water. You ready for today? You ready?
We're gonna talk today.
All right. Last one, because I told you guys we have a full house. So it's the 5 Bison plus a Panther. It's pretty hard to introduce this one because it's just so much going on, man. Like truly, I was blessed when I saw his name pop up on the sign up genius because I was ready for it. a student at Howard University, a true scholar of sorts, a man of many talents, a man of many mentalities, a man of many minds. You know what I'm saying? And he told us that he was going to wear a suit. And that's when I realized that we were dealing with someone who came not only to discuss, but to teach. And that's why I have on the, multicolored turban, just so I could match his flair a bit. Our good friend, Brendan.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm also a member of SOB cult or clan or whatever you just called it.
Shout out Money Gang. Shout out Money Gang.
Shout out Money Gang. International business major and finance. We bringing it back. Just glad to be here. Interesting conversation that we about to have. I'm excited to be here.
Since we bringing up the Colts, can we just all take a second to agree that the grocery store, not it?
It's not it at all.
I'm with John on this one.
Okay, Kalia, this is a Howard thing. So you're neutral on this one. But
I was not paying y'all no mind because I knew it had nothing to do with me.
No, but it's got something to do with you now. So when we discuss, all right. So how would you feel like if the school you were going to had the nickname the grocery store? How you feel?
Grocery store?
Yes or no?
I don't like that. I don't like the way that sounds. Why does it?
Elaborate.
Why is it that?
Very much a
okay, cool. We have a bunch of comments. Let's see. Yay. Okay, cool. We got a bunch of people from co-ops and the flagship.
The flagship.
Yes. Cool. That's cool. A lot of people from the flagship. You also have some people representing South Carolina. So that is South Carolina State University in Claflin.
Hey.
South Carolina vibes.
Original Panthers and original Bulldogs there. And shout out to the grocery store. We always see you. We just got somebody new in the grocery store too. But
Armani.
Exactly. It's gonna stick. Also, Miss Terry Bernadette Williams, she recently retired from Howard University. She coined the term the grocery store. We give much love and thanks for her service as an advisor. Now, getting into the discussion we have for the evening, we sort of talked about how Black people have made strides with Western medicine by sort of working around the racism that's been in it, or just helping the Europeans better understand how the world works. And we also discussed how there's been many instances of medical malpractice and illegal experimentation onto Black people. And seeing as that we're all doing this virtually, and COVID-19 is a thing, and there's now the British strand, which has been found in America, as well as two African strands, the Nigerian strand and the South African strand, as far as we know of. So things are sort of picking up for COVID. There's been a lot of apprehension when it comes to Black people and, the vaccine. And I'm not going to ask you guys a simple question about whether or not that the hesitation is well-founded, because we understand that Black people tend to be guinea pigs when it comes to a lot of these things. So the question isn't not whether the hesitation is acceptable, but the question is, how can the COVID vaccine be, I guess, administered to Black people in a way that ensures Black people that we won't become guinea pigs?
Okay, I see we're letting
I was about to say, not the crickets.
So
I honestly don't see an answer to that besides waiting to see what happens to everyone else. Like, I don't know. The way you're framing it is like basically, historically, when it comes to these medical vaccines or any other type of medical research that happens, they have Black people as, like the test subjects, like the original, guinea pigs. The only way I feel like you can offset that is by having, in this case, the white people have to be the guinea pigs, because that it's just like that's the only really way you can, like,
which makes sense.
You don't want them to test it on animals or anything.
I mean,
I
You know what I mean? Like,
it's
tired of
I
that.
gotta
Yeah,
agree.
there's no simple way to
it's
answer
an
this question.
issue that really has an answer because who's
I
to
mean,
say?
vaccine goes through, I don't know how much testing they like put it through, but it goes through like some extensive testing before, you know, they just unleash it on the population. Even right now, like it's very, very limited. Like don't nobody have access to the vaccine if they want it, unless they're a medical worker or just like, you know, apparently because this is how the world works, just a higher up in society, like, you know, a bureaucrat or something. It is real backwards that public servants are getting, you know, the vaccine before the actual public, but that's something we can get into later. I mean, it ties into the topic of medical racism.
I just want to say, like, who's to say they don't flood our communities with a version of the vaccine that isn't as polished as the one that would get mandated?
That's what
Like,
my biggest concern.
Yeah,
How do we know which strand we're getting? Because it could be elitist, like the higher ups that get a whole real strand, and then they passing us the little placebo, and we thinking we getting the vaccine, but we really ain't getting nothing.
The commercial version, the economy version. Like, who's to say we're not getting yo?
You feel me? Like we think we're getting Oreos, but we really getting the Food Line Great Essentials brand. And now
literally,
Okay, but that's still a valid version. It's still a valid version.
no. The off-brand, tasting weird.
You grew an extra finger.
Oh my God.
Okay. So we getting into how we might be getting a vaccine that's mixed with like uranium, and that's not what we all want. So Teresa starts to pay different races to try the vaccine. And to respond to this one a little bit, I feel like on paper that would work, but in the same thing, we're like heading into what is it? About to be like month 10 of an economic downturn, and a lot of people are desperate, especially Black people, because we don't have much capital, if any, in the country. So if they start paying people to take the vaccine, and then this would have to be a lot of money, like a lot of money. It'd have to be insured. So even if you take the money and you react badly to it, you're still covered. Because then it would just be like, okay, we're gonna pay you to take the vaccine. A lot of Black people will end up taking it, and then we see a lot of Black people sort of bite the bullet.
But then even in the retrospect, like she did say other races, so even if another race takes it, it's still a large immigrant population, it's still a large, like it's still other minorities that are still at a disproportionate advantage to getting this vaccine, because they like to paint it as they put it in the poor or impoverished or marginalized communities, which we all know are majority minority communities. So it would still put people at a disproportionate disadvantage.
The framing of it all kind of bothers me because
we are going back to the Anderson thing.
You want me to go? I was going to touch on what she was saying. Basically, no matter what races take it, it's like she was going to say, it's always going to be like a marginalized community, simply because there's no incentive for white people to take it. Although we're in an economic downturn, they're still less disadvantaged than everybody else, just simply because of the color.
Yeah, they aren't even catching it at the same rate as like Black people are.
Because healthcare is better for them, so it doesn't really. They live more spaced out, and it's less.
And not in concentrated poverty either. They don't got to deal with environmental racism or any of that. But the framing of it as just like paying different races to take it, it kind of bothers me, because that's like that's how we got to this topic in the first place. Just treating different races, like races medically, as like our DNA or our blood is supposed to be different. That's what Charles Drew was mad at the American Red Cross about, because it's like, like, why are you treating like this blood like this certain, method or this certain like just thing is going to affect it differently? Like, so I mean, I understand like the hesitance, like Black people don't want to take it because like medically we have a negative history with just medical officials and just medicine in general, just impacting us negatively because they lying to us or like blah, 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 blah. Okay, Obi, go.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to say, do y'all realize that's already happening though? Like people are already being paid to take the vaccine. Or well,
I wouldn't be surprised.
When it was in trials, they were literally offering money to participate in the trials, and
How
that's
much?
I think it was like 1,200 or 2,800, somewhere one of those numbers. I remember seeing like ads for it, and that they were actively looking for Black people as well, because an overwhelming number of the participants were non-Black, and they were saying that they had to try it on Black people to get a, I guess you could say, a different genetic spread. I don't know what the real reasoning was, but they were basically reaching out to Black people with money to try the trials. And the only real, I guess you could say, pseudo solution I can think of would be to put Black doctors and physicians, like Black doctors, at the forefront of the trials and developing the vaccine, and also I would say administering and I guess dispersing the vaccine as well, like just being involved in the whole process every step of the way. I guess that would make it more palatable to our community.
Palatable?
Yeah, that boy said that word.
Yeah.
This is colonizers' language.
Don't do him like that. That's a hard
I'm
word.
sorry.
Yeah, messed me up. I was like, palatable.
Sorry.
I mean,
But
if
you
we-
understand what I'm trying to say.
If we're gonna harp on Obi for this, several times throughout the show today, you have said gynecology, and I'm pretty sure it's like gynecology.
No.
No,
Right? Like,
Maybe-
no,
Definitely gynecology. Definitely gynecology.
Is palatable or
How do you
palatable?
feel? How do you feel?
Palatable.
Both of you.
Palatable.
Both of you.
Okay,
How do you
got
feel?
Palatable.
Palatable and gynecology. Yes, indeed.
Anyway, back to what I was saying. Black people would have to be involved in every single step of the process for it to become more palatable to our community.
Did you even? Oh, okay. All right. So there's another question, and I'm so thankful that Teresa Starks is in the comments tonight. You was leading us through this. So she asked, "Would you guys take the vaccine?" And I'll start, and then we can do the hand raising thing. Nah, I wouldn't take the American one. Russian/Chinese one. I'd take it.
The
I wouldn't
Russian.
what?
Yeah, I would take the Russian
Do
/Chinese.
you know the
Logic
Russian
behind
one?
that.
You know the Russian one was the first one to be finished, right?
So, what's your point?
Okay, and the
No, don't even.
medical community in Russia.
Before you even bring that up, like I just want to know the logic behind taking like.
Yeah, the medical community in Russia, they were like, because the government basically forced them to finish it by a certain date, and the medical community was like, "No, it's not done." And I think Vladimir Putin was like, "No, it's done," and it just
Okay,
There was-
okay. So the same vaccine that's been used in Russia has been used in China. China's good. I'm gonna follow
for
what China.
now. For now,
Very ominous, very imperialist.
I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure the Russian one had the most. I'm gonna send you some links after this because
How are you gonna?
The purpose of the conversation is to have the links in speech format to disseminate to us.
Not the links in speech. Okay.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
I would just like to say, nose goes not it. I'm not taking it. I just don't trust. I don't trust the vaccines. Like, I would like, in order for a vaccine to really work, they have to inject a small amount of whatever they're trying to cure in you, and I just don't trust them in injecting any type of virus, disease, or anything into me when the pandemic is still so vast after so many months. Like,
yeah.
I'm cautious. I don't
The
like
vaccine doesn't have a dead version of COVID. It's a 2-part vaccination. So what happens is you get injected with a fatty mRNA cell. So it's a cell that has genetic information that will help your body fight COVID, but it doesn't have COVID itself. So you would get injected one day, and then 28 days later, you will get the second half. So after the first injection, you're like 60% immune, which is how a nurse still got COVID after her first injection. And then 28 days later, you get the second injection, which brings you up to 95% immunity. And that's the best we can do right now.
I forgot.
So what you're telling me is I'm getting 2 shots and it's still no guarantee that I'm not gonna get COVID?
There's a 5% chance you could still get COVID after the fact.
I got you. I'm hearing you.
That's
Got you.
yeah, because 94%.
Quick question. Yeah, I know it's difficult, but left is right, right is left, and then you figure up is still up though.
Does Brennan want to speak?
Yeah, I was gonna agree and say that there's no way that I'm taking the vaccine as of right now. It's just it's way too up in the air. A lot of noise, a lot of bad noises coming off of it. It just doesn't seem like the best thing to do right now. Even that 5% that Obi was talking about, in this case, it's still a high percentage of you actually getting the virus in the first hand. So that's something that I'm not going to put myself or my family in jeopardy right now. I want to make sure that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. It can't be rushed. It can't be tested on random things. It has to be 100% effective before I actually consider it.
And
Look how the medical community has affected my people.
That's Marsh. That's Marsh.
Yeah. No, I'm not taking
I'm
it.
excited today.
It's too new. They're still like, and people were like making the scenario of like, oh, if we had to take it to go back to school. No, they're not gonna make us take it to go back to school, and I still wouldn't be taking it, just simply because it's super new. And like, there's optional vaccines, like the meningococcal vaccine was created how long ago, and they're still gonna take it. Like, it's still not required. So like, I don't see this ever being required as something to do. And like, COVID's been around since March, right? In the US.
Allegedly.
Yeah, it's 2021.
Allegedly.
Thank God I haven't had COVID yet. So something's going right over here, and I'm gonna just keep doing that until need be. Like, I can't do that.
Yeah. So, Obi?
I was gonna say I want to be the first yes, and it's not an easy decision to make, definitely, but I think I know enough about it to be secure in the fact that as of right now, it's the best option, only because I've seen firsthand COVID is way worse. I feel like, because I know a lot of people who have the vaccine already. Like, a lot of my friends work at testing sites, so they just got it last week or the week before. Okay. And yeah, but they're fine. They're Black. They're doing okay. So I felt, but I will say a valid concern that I do have that may stop me or change my yes to a no is the fact that this vaccine, although it's effective in the short term, one, we don't know how long it vaccinates you for. So you know how like every year there's a new flu shot. As of right now, we only know that the vaccine is effective up to 3 months. We haven't really seen it be effective beyond that point. And also, secondly, we don't know what the long-term implications are. So like 5 years from now, we don't know if those RNA cells malfunction and you just, whatever happens to you, happens to you. Like, we don't know. Like, we haven't had the chance to do long-term testing. So it's hard. It's hard, but I would say yes for now. I just because I've seen it firsthand not mess up people that I know. But it's a really unsure yes.
So yeah,
they have the Howard University Black celebrity say yes to the vaccine, and this comment comes up. Just interesting.
Yeah, but also I would second tentative yes. I feel like for me personally, I would have to scope out the terrain just to see like how it has affected other people. Just, in a certain period of time, probably like 3-6 months. But also just like Obi, like I have a cousin that's a medical worker and she's already taken the vaccine and like she's just chilling so far. And I feel like if my, like nurse of a cousin is trusting it so far, I don't see why I shouldn't. But yeah.
I want the lockdown. I don't even know.
And I'm glad that we started talking about.
We're trying to get out the house.
I'm trying to have my college experience, but simultaneously, it's like, what's the point if we all get sick because this vaccine isn't perfected? Or
that'd be an issue. That'd definitely be an
issue. We all coming back in wheelchairs, like
COVID vaccine.
He said it's going to incapacitate
paralysis. We not supported that. That's not found.
Well, actually, there was let me not even bring that knowledge up here. I feel like that would. It was one case. It was one case, or I think a few, where this woman who had taken a trial version of a vaccine, she ended up having major. She had major complications in which her spinal cord got paralyzed, and it was due to her genetic makeup. There was something that she reacted wrongly to the trial version.
Are you blaming her?
No. Well, okay, I'm letting you know there was two issues. Her genetic makeup wasn't compatible for whatever reason. It didn't really go into specifics. And simultaneously, she was given a trial version that wasn't complete. Like she was in one of the first trials, and she is now paralyzed. But that's like they said 2% of trial takers had complications, which sounds small, but when you scale it up to the entire US population, that is like millions of people. So keep that in mind as well.
And speaking of, before we get off that, would you guys take it for 10K tax free?
I need 100.
100K tax free?
No, what is 10K gonna do for me? I should already have 10K from the government. Like, I need more money than that.
Yeah, I need.
Listen. We can say that
100K is calling my name, honestly.
So okay. Brennan would take 10K. Everyone else wants more money, and so yeses, 100K, 110K. Khalid and I are still those though. I take it. Like Cuba had a vaccine, I would be a fan of the Cuban one. I'm not gonna lie to you. But
why do you keep trying to outsource the vaccine? Like it's gonna be better. Oh my god.
No, he okay. We've known Jameer for long enough to scope out his character.
I just don't get it.
No, if there's a way he can take a situation and connect it in a Pan-African or communist solidarity sense,
literally,
he's going to do it.
This is the vaccine to be Pan-African. Like what?
Okay, but you're telling me. So you telling me?
I want the vaccine. I want the vaccine that is created in the locale of where my strain that I may be infected with is. So that, like, I would not want a vaccine from China because I'm not in China and I don't know what strain of the COVID virus they have. Why would I take a vaccine from Cuba when I live in New York, Jameer?
They outsource their medical workers, though. They probably
exactly.
You're missing the point. It makes no sense
also
to outsource a vaccine.
Europeans.
We know there's several different strains. Why would
Obi, at the same time, you do see that the British strain is over here, so it's only a matter of time before the Chinese strain or the African strain come in. So
again, you're jumping the gun. Why would you vaccinate for a version of the virus that just got here when you've been dealing with one that's been here for 10 months already?
Jameer, what's the next question?
I'm glad you asked, because it was gonna be a nice segue after we talked about Obi and his friends working at the testing station, and you knowing someone, your Aunt Ivy, who's working in the medical field, and we're gonna introduce the fact that there are many Black people in the medical profession who are frontline workers who've come into combat with the COVID virus, as well as just other medical ailments and whatever that might be. I know recently there was a doctor who was on the front lines, and she said that she came down with COVID and that her white coworkers didn't really give her the respect and treatment that was needed, and she succumbed to the virus a couple of days later after a video went viral of her. So understanding that Black people, amidst this national, it's a national crisis because there's so many things that went wrong. This national crisis, there's still Black people who are fighting, and then they're still being mistreated. And this can be expanded upon, not just in the American sense, because like we mentioned, there are doctors in Kenya who've been working for the last several months without pay, and they don't even have the ample supplies or industry to fight COVID effectively. And there's a second wave happening in Africa right now, and it's getting pretty bad. So the thing is, not in the sense of what can we do about this situation to sort of alleviate the stress and pain of Black people in the medical field, because the government isn't helping. You got to put food on the table, so you got to go to work. So it's more so the sense of when it comes to being Black in the medical field, what is a way to prevent something like this from happening again? And not in the sense of like not the Thursday episode where we're like, yeah, we're gonna build Black infrastructure and have a whole community. No. Say that for Thursday. But more so like, how do we prevent Black people from sort of suffering in the short term, not on a governmental level, but more so on a more personal level? And I
Like
see
the pandemic,
what happened though?
like in terms of what, like, what are we preventing?
Just not what are we preventing, but more so how do we, like, I guess, prepare for it in a sense, like lay the groundwork in the contemporary to prevent, if that makes sense. Because not like plan decades out, and the question might be a little bit iffy and ambiguous on the years here. Is it just understanding that globally, when it comes to Black medical practitioners, they aren't given the proper service or respect, nor do they have the equipment to adequately fight these. What is a contemporary response to these lackings, if that makes sense? I guess that didn't make sense.
It made sense. I got you. So, at this point, it's like it's been something that's been going on for centuries, like something before a lot of us could even conceptualize about even thinking about stuff like this. So, the only thing that could really be done in a current sense would be like training and legislation. Like it would have to be stuff put in place, codes, policies, rules, regulations, something like that, that make sure that it's equitable playing fields across all hospitals with all races, like just diversity and inclusion training, because Black patients, as we all know, always get disproportionately ignored and treated differently and put in worse conditions. So if they're thinking about the Black patients like that, the Black practitioner is going to get the same type of treatment. So in a current sense, without dismantling the whole infrastructure and rebuilding it to work for Black people, it will have to be done through the way this system works, which is codes, regulations, and advocating for that legislation and those policies.
Thanks, Khalil, for starting this off.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just said. Yeah, like she just said, it's the way that the system works right now. We're not getting the right people who really need the new technology, the codes, and the policies that could really help people in the long term and in the current pandemic that we're in right now. It's just the system has a history of just going back and forth with Black people, and we're just trying to make do with what we have, and that's the problem right now. So we can't really prepare unless we have those tools, those opportunities, and those regulations in place to really help and make sure that our people are safe.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Okay, cool. Silence means no. So moving on, we mentioned that we're in a pandemic. We're all pretty bright individuals, if I do say so myself. So moving into the mental sphere, we've all been sort of cooped up in the house, or we should have been cooped up in the house. If you've been outside, like partying, don't tell nobody that on the show. Please just let it ride. But in a sense of talking about mental health, and when we talk about African people and mental health, it doesn't really get the shine it's deserved because of race science, which sort of said Black people couldn't think anyway. And then we have the several centuries of just mutilation and abuse that have just been inherited genetically, and lots of trauma that's either been repressed or passed on to others. So when we talk about the current space of how white supremacy and just European hegemony is played on African mental health here, what is a way that we can address or begin to address and sort of undo the effects of, I guess, mental imperialism in order to sort of make sure that we heal as a collective people? And Marsh, I saw you.
I think it's two things we can do. First, within our own communities, we have to destigmatize mental health and mental health issues, because in our Black communities, we've been raised and conditioned just through struggles to ignore things like that and push that to the side. Like, that doesn't really matter. Like, if you're sad today, you still got to go get up and go to work or go to school so you can get to college and get up out of here. And I feel like that it's on everybody in every community. We're raised not to have feelings and not to pay attention to our feelings. So we have to break down those barriers and the stigma attached to that. And also, when we actually seek out help and we trust people, there has to be Black professionals within the mental health that can actually understand our struggles. And that comes with breaking down the educational barrier and things of that nature. And yeah, that's all I got. I'm gonna let somebody else talk.
No, I appreciate
it. So I chose this topic because of how my career path used to go when I was little. Like, every career I wanted to take on came from me seeing a problem in that field. Like, I wanted to be a registered nurse, I wanted to be a trauma surgeon, I wanted to be a gynecologist, all because I saw problems in that field that I wanted to fix. And now I'm studying psychology because, like Marshall said, there's no real Black physicians in that field. And doing the advocacy work that I do around gun violence prevention, a lot of the times the root causes come from untreated mental health issues and us suppressing our mental health, and that coming out as radical and sometimes dangerous or lethal behaviors. So we definitely need to unstigmatize the thought of Black people going to therapy, but it's hard to unstigmatize that without having somebody Black to talk to. Like, already not wanting to talk about something, but then having to over explain it to somebody who doesn't understand the problems of Black people and Black youth and Black children, it just makes it even more apprehension and more apathy coming towards that. So getting more Black professionals in that will help destigmatize Black health so that we can even think about healing from 400 years of being told we ain't nothing and we ain't never gonna be nothing.
Hello.
Ain't nobody got nothing to say?
Really?
I got one last thing.
Get it in there, because Marsh and Kalia both touched heavily on the fact that we do need more Black professionals in psychology, therapy, psychiatry, and everything of the sort. And I wanted to point out that it's especially important because even when, like, white people go into these spheres, like, they just got some really weird licensed therapists that, like, end up just gaslighting their clients or just telling them some stuff that just doesn't make sense at all and not really understanding where the problems stem from. And when it comes to, just putting more Black people in these positions, I feel like if I, as a Black person, go into therapy, there's like things that there's a certain different kind of trauma that you have to deal with as a Black person that can hardly be understood and hardly be expressed because it's such an it's real, but it's such an abstract thing. So to, like, get a therapist that understands that understands how to treat that understands how to help that, it is really important, especially because, a lot of people just don't understand, like, the violence that Black people have to deal with, bidirectional. They don't understand, like, the lack of space there is within these households to talk about these things, because as we have said, like, speaking about mental health, speaking about depression, speaking about, like, everything in between is always stigmatized and taboo within the Black community for several different reasons. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work, and this is, like, so much harder than other tasks we can take up, like community development or just like re-upping education, because this is like unlearning, destigmatizing, and it's a lot of, like, social work. And when it comes to social work like that, you really just have to do a lot to change people's minds, which is hard in this world that we live in. Like, Very nice.
Absolutely, Jody. And you, Marsh, you got it. I see you, G.
Oh yeah, I feel good because y'all always be up here dropping quotes and all of that. I get to drop a quote today from
Go ahead.
William Whitfield. He wrote a black author, PhD from, I forget where he got his PhD from, but
It's good. It's good.
nah, but like he wrote a book on social work. He's a social worker. He's PhD in psychology. So he basically said, and this has been a problem for a while about and they've been trying to address it to the point where they actually asked people about it, and he basically told white social work professionals that there has to be an understanding of there's a difference between poor people and poor black people and the traumas that go with that, and that we have to, and there's only one group of people that can actually understand that, and that's us.
Yeah.
So like it takes upon us to actually go into these things and break down these barriers, and that's all. I just want to drop my quote.
Bet, bro, we got you. That's definitely going on. That's on the list. That's on the quote list. Marsh funny. But we did talk about how, Marsh, you expanded on it a little bit, but there's a difference between poor people and poor black people. And then Jody said that there's this abstract feeling because it's a lived experience of being black in America. And we talk about how we need more black people, more black physicians, more black psychologists, more black people who are able to address these mental shackles in a sense. But then there's the barrier because you still got to pay for school after that. So after you become a psychologist and go the traditional school route, you still have to make money off of that. And then if you start becoming a psychologist who gets paid for your work on community healing, then it becomes inaccessible to the community. But then there needs to be a mechanism in place for these, black physicians to do the work that's necessary, while also making sure their material needs are met, as well as making sure they meet the community. And something that's been happening is a good friend of mine, Dr. King Salim Kalfani, who's in Richmond, Virginia. He helped organize these healing circles and these healing sessions where it was a very traditional African method. And it was in the sense that black people would come together and they'd sit in this circle and it was very intimate. It was very intimate in that they would have to open themselves up to these people, these strangers, but they weren't strangers. They were all black people who were ready to get rid of their trauma. And they'd have to open up and share. And as they were sharing, they'd love and affirm onto one another. And this method is considerably cheaper than going to a traditional psychologist, and it's also a lot more communal than the simple person-to-person style that's known. But the sense here is that it's not that well known. I mean, how many of you guys have ever heard of an African trauma circle? Yeah,
that feels like that. It almost feels fictional, bro. Because when we speak,
it really does sound fictional.
You think I just lie about something like that?
It's not. It's not.
It's so unheard of that, like, it don't even feel real.
Literally, it sounds otherworldly.
That just goes to show how stigmatized these conversations are.
It's not as taboo as people think it is. It's just not as professional as that one is. But it'd be a lot of times in these mentorship programs, because like I said, I do advocacy work. It'd be a lot of times in these mentorship programs where we have these circles where it don't even have to be about the most traumatizing thing that you've ever been through. It could just be like, bro, what happened to you last week? And as people start divulging what happened to them in the last week as a black person in America, it morphs into this big conversation about the stuff that we're talking about now and just everything. So it doesn't have to be like something super construct, like go back to when you were first born and let's recount from then what happened to you and why you're like this. It's more of like we having an open discussion like this, and then all of a sudden we are, now I'm saying, crying and telling each other we love each other because it just got that deep. So it's just all about getting into the spaces where you find those people that have the similar lived experiences, but not the exact same, so that you can like learn and grow from them.
Thanks, Kalia. Brennan, I saw you.
Yeah, it's more on the fact that it's having those medical professionals and psychologists being and understanding where the people are from and what they go through. It's coming back to that part that we were talking about with Black trauma and stuff like that. You can't really have that from a person of a with a white person because they're not really going to truly understand it. So going back to these places and really going over and going through the trauma that we've been through, it'll help everybody in the long run, as we previously said. It just like centers like those, it just provides people with a lot of with the chance to really understand how they are and stuff like that.
Also, to piggyback off of what you were saying when you was like, what you say? Oh, finding a means to live with being a psychologist, because being a psychologist, you gotta go through a lot of school and you charge a lot of money to tell people in a nice way that they're crazy and we're gonna help you. But what Black psychologists and other medical professionals need to do is do what other ethnicities do in our communities, which is come to our communities, get our money, and then go back home and do what they have to do. Like it'll be a lot of Arabian corner stores or a lot of Asian ran corner stores and hair stores or all that other stuff. They don't live nowhere near where they're making their money at, but they make their little money, put up their extra barricades for protection and go back home and help each other. And they can do it for the low or they can do it for free because they're not draining their community of the money. They're going somewhere else and having them pay top dollar just so they can go back home and feed their community. So I know that's what I was going to do when I got my degree. I was going to go get top dollar somewhere else and then come back to the community and offer my services for free because that's what I'm doing.
Absolutely. That's Pan-Africanism right there. That right there. That's community building. Kalia always been solid. Bars. That's also gonna be one of the quotes. Last question before, maybe last question, depending on where things go. But we're talking about medicine and just the medical history. Let me just get into it. No flash, no flare. So Black people are said to have a lot of pre-existing conditions in America, and this tends to ignore the fact that Black people were literally given scraps to eat. There's a reason why pork is such a big staple in the Black community. And then there's also the fact that even when it comes to housing, Black people have been put in deplorable housing spaces, typically in industrial or economic districts instead of residential districts. So that way they're exposed to more things. I know a little Black girl in the UK, she was recently the first death to be registered due to poor air quality. And I believe she was younger than the age of 10. So we understand that environmental racism is definitely a thing and that these environmental factors lead into these pre-existing conditions. So the question is not in the vein of, well, Black people just need to move or, we're going to buy a bunch of land and move somewhere, but more so, how can we address these factors now? Because this comment here is having the knowledge of what's healthy for you when your current living environment is unhealthy for you and you're unable to move somewhere. What you sure you aren't exposed to asbestos or you don't get mesothelioma in the next 3 days because of your job and just the conditions you're working. It's a bit of an extensive question, but I feel like you guys can in the next
All right, I have a little bit of special insight on this because this past summer, not this summer, the ABLM summer, the summer before last summer, when I was at the University of Miami in their little journalism program, and I was living there for 3 weeks, I got the opportunity. Okay.
Hold up. Could just say I got this little opportunity, like you just get flown to Miami.
He just slide.
Be a part of some medical research.
No, it was medical research. I got to interview.
It was some little
Okay, I got the interview because it was part of the story that I did. It was a journalism workshop. I got to stay in their dorms for 3 weeks. That's when
shout out the grocery store, SOC.
No.
Anyways, So my story was basically about this doctor named Dr. Pedro Greer, who has lived in Miami his entire life and is basically the dean at Florida International University. And at Florida International University, he runs this program called the Neighborhood Help Program, where basically it pulls the talents of the students in the College of Medicine at Florida, FIU, and it pulls the talents of the people in the School of Social Work and in the School of Law. And basically what they do is they go out into these communities in Miami and they offer free services in like law, social work, basically so psychology and like just helping out in the households. And they offer free just medical services to these people, just like free of charge. And like that's part of what the college does. And like he actually received the Freedom Medal from Barack Obama. It's pretty cool for this program. But he was talking to me, he was very passionate about it. But he was like, basically there are these things called like the social determinants of health, where it kind of alludes to what you were talking about earlier with the girl dying from poor air quality. Like he was saying, yeah, because of environmental racism, because of just people living in areas where, you know, there's like a lot of exposure to lead, a lot of exposure to a lot of different things. Just not only is there a healthcare disparity in how people are treated, but yeah, those pre-existing conditions always just exist. And I'm looking at the story right now because there's a quote in there. He said something that was like really telling, and I just found it. So basically he was talking about Miami, which is like, it has one of the highest just notions of like income inequality in the nation. And there's a lot of like little tiny cities within Miami because that's just how like large Miami is. So he was speaking and he told me, if you're in Overtown, which is one of Miami cities, versus Brickell Key, there's a 15-year difference in your survival. 90% of these diseases are caused by social determinants of health and other non-biological causes. He says the most important factor for survival in America is not your genetic code, it's actually your zip code. So that just goes to show like how big of a difference there is in just quality of health for Black and white people in America and for poor and wealthy people in America. Because when he told me that, I was like, 15-year difference, that's unacceptable, really.
Not even just unacceptable.
Like you said, I kind of have a personal experience with this as well. So where I live is ranked like top 30 most toxic zip codes in Hampton Road. So it's like the air quality, like not knowing about the air quality will have us thinking that we have a lot of pre-existing conditions just because we're Black. But when you really think about it, and when I became educated on where I exactly live and the fact that we like right up the street from a coal mine, and the neighborhood is wrapped with an interstate, and like it's no real true healthcare for the children down here, it explains why so many kids have asthma, why so many kids have lung disease. It's apartment complexes and projects that are running rampant with black mold, old paint that's peeling, that got lead and asbestos in it, infestations and all this other stuff. And we're just thinking it's because of who we are and where we live, not even knowing that it's because these places are infringing on tenant rights, that we're living in a zip code that's not even healthy for humans to live in general. So one way that we can fix some of this is just educating the people on where exactly you live. Like the stuff that you're going through isn't normal. Just because the government normalized these conditions doesn't make them normal. So educating people on where they live, how they're living, and how they can change it. Like you don't have to necessarily move to get the change that you want to see. You just have to bring it up, know about it, and can speak to it. But Black people typically think that we have a whole bunch of pre-existing things that we just inherently at a disadvantage just because we weren't used to this environment. It's been passed down from generation to generation and generation, when really it's just been the environment that we've been placed in. We've been given scraps, like Jamir said. That's why we rely on the pigs so heavy, because they used to give us what they couldn't eat and what they wouldn't eat. We've been placed in these trenches, these ghettos, these slums where there's literally like no clean water. It'd be like water leaks, Flint don't got no water still, and they've been going through that since we started high school and we done graduated, done became freshmen, almost sophomores, and they still don't have clean water. So it's not necessarily our fault for being poor. It's not our fault that we were redlined and the New Deal pushed us all the way back so that we have to live in these slums. It's just the product of living here. Now we have all these pre-existing ailments that put us at a disadvantage.
I want to also say,
Well,
I wanted to also bring up the fact that there's like, and this is gonna sound a little hotepy, but there's
Listen, I'm gonna pause you there.
What?
There's no such thing as hotepi on the show. It's all African. Proceed.
Okay. There's also this counterculture of believing that Black people are somehow impervious to certain illnesses or certain diseases. Like even I think with COVID, when it first broke out in the United States, there was this weird belief that Black people were immune to the COVID vaccine. I mean, to the COVID virus, and we wouldn't get it, or that if you were set up correctly spiritually, you wouldn't get the virus, or that Black people just are stronger inherently and they don't need painkillers, they don't need to be listened to in the hospital, that we are just stronger human beings, and we are just more powerful, and we don't need to be actually catered to medically. Like, and that's why I said hotepi, because it's like we are still human beings at the end of the day, and I feel like that belief as well is also harmful, just as harmful as normalizing bad conditions. I also feel like believing that you're impervious to everything because you're Black is also an issue.
but it's funny because white people believe the same thing, and we could talk about this with are y'all familiar with the condition of like endometriosis in women?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So that's what I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I was going to speak about like that. Like I don't know much about like the actual like endo thing, but I just know that when it comes to diagnosing it in white versus Black women, like there was this long like medical peer-reviewed belief that Black women like couldn't get it, which was basically founded in nothing. I remember there were even like some journals like talking about endometriosis, and what they were saying about it, they were like, yeah, if you want to diagnose it, you're typically going to find it in wealthy white women. So when Black women would get endometriosis, they would usually chalk it up to, like maybe this woman is sexually active, or maybe she's just having pain. Like that's a Black women thing. Black women are just like stronger and more durable than white women are. Just
more durable.
all different kinds of mess.
I'm talking about a Band-Aid. I'm so weird.
When it comes to like what Obi was just saying about believing that we're impervious to these kinds of conditions and diseases, white people believe the same thing, and that's how Black people go neglected, and we get doctors out here believing that Black women can't deal with endometriosis, and
that's why the Black woman maternal mortality rate is so high, because just because we can take it don't mean that we should take it. Like just because Black people may have a higher pain tolerance than most doesn't mean that they can take that type of pain.
And I mean, I believe
It's all race science. You can chalk it up to that. It's all race science.
Definitely.
Marsh, I saw you had something to say.
Yeah, I feel like education is a big thing. I'm a big thing on education and denormalizing things that should not be normal. But also, we got to look not necessarily just to our Black elite, but just Black people in general, our communities in general. We got to start giving back as a people.
Absolutely.
We got to start giving back as a people and helping these communities that's worse off than us. Because I feel like there's people that are like Black communities are bad, but there's certain Black communities that are worse than others, and we got to start helping those communities first and work our way up, honestly, because we can't just not help some people, because we all Black, we all in this together. So we got to start. We can't just be making money to line our pockets. We got to be making money to give back, and I feel like that's a start that we can start working on now instead of changing the whole, because we understand that with healthcare in this country is a business, and this business is run by capitalism, and the more money you make, the better treatment you get. That's fine, and we can't change that right now, and we need to work on changing that. But for right now, that's something that we can do.
That's definitely true, because her comment, that's definitely true, because my mom, she just gave her kidney like about to be 2 years, but she just gave her kidney in like November 2019, and like the process of healing, she had to be in the hospital for a little bit, but it took tooth and nail to get her some pain medicine when she was going through it. Like, she didn't just give up a whole organ. So I definitely agree with that comment, because we had to literally almost argue down the nurse to give her pain medicine.
Absolutely, bro. You can chalk it all up to just race science and the belief that Black people are more physically gifted, which allows them to tolerate more pain, which is typically dealt out by the European. And unfortunately, we could definitely delve into that, but our time has come to a close. We've been chatting it up for about a smooth hour. I thank you guys for being on. Marshall, Kalia, you guys are already a part of our Council of Scholars / our Mbongi Goodfellas. It's sticking now, it just rolls off the tongue. But Brennan, we have to induct you. So are you ready, brother?
I am ready.
All right. Now, once you become a part of this, it is your soul and duty to not spread misinformation nor lead anyone wrong or awry. It is your soul and duty to make sure Obi, wake up. We inducting Brennan. That we are ensuring the next generation is able to enjoy the fruits of our intellectual and physical labors, because we know that theory without practice is worthless. And as well as understanding, if you were part of Mbongi Goodfellas, we have to do a lot of promo so we can grow. Are you prepared?
You also have to get jumped out so you can't leave.
Yeah.
Not even that. Not even jumped out, bro. We're just gonna give you the trial vaccine for COVID and see what happens.
There's only one way out. It's only one way out, bro.
Whoa.
I don't understand.
The description.
So
You in it now.
But we gotta that. So any last words?
Thank y'all for having me.
And paying us some mind for like an hour and a half.
Thank y'all for having me too. Appreciate it.
Always. So right now we're gonna make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And right now we have a word from our who?
Our sponsors.
Our sponsors.
Sponsors.
We'll work on it.
Hey everyone, it is Tasha Turnbull here, owner of T2 Fitness, and I am bringing to you all the Homebody Series. The Homebody Series was created because we are now more so at home, but guess what? I want us to feel connected. I want us to feel strong together. I want us to sweat together, and I want us to build our healthiest bodies possible. So we're going to be bringing you live workouts that you can do in the mornings, in the evenings, on the weekends, anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. They're going to be low impact workouts, high impact workouts, but guess what? No matter what your fitness level is, all workouts are going to be able to accommodate wherever you are along your fitness journey. So make sure you join us, because we need to work out, we need to be strong, and we can do this all from home.
Well, guys, it's been a great day. It's been a great show, just chatting it up with everyone, discussing just a contextualized version of everything that's been going on. Because when we talk about the medical field, it really spans from the physical to the mental to the emotional. And as Black people, as African people, we've suffered greatly in many of those aspects. So great, just a fellowship here. And I mentioned the healing circle because this is a form of healing circle. It's not only a part of the political education piece here, but this is a form of open discussion, not just so we can hear each other talk, but so that we can sort of connect, because we understand that the pandemic has shut a lot of people in, and we want to make sure that, there's an avenue, there's a window for people to get out. And that's why we always start with that affirmation, always, just to sort of do our part in making sure that we can help heal lots of generational trauma. And don't forget to get Medical Apartheid, a great book on what we've been discussing here today, as well as don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We had a packed house today, and a great way to start off the year. We ended the year on a high note. We starting on an even higher one, and now we're gonna sort of give you your day back. So thank you for fellowshipping with me. It's always been a pleasure, and always I'm your host, Jaimir, and I'll see you guys in 2050 and beyond.